If Dwarf Fortress is the granddaddy of the modern base builder game, then Rimworld and Oxygen Not Included are two of its highest achieving children. And in this video, I'm going to compare these two amazing games and tell you which one you should be adding to your library. That is, if you don't have both of them already. After we've talked about game features, I'm going to show you the key to unlocking which game you're going to prefer. Stick around and let me know what you think. If you don't know these games already, then a quick summary is that both games feature minions who complete tasks for you, the player, the unseen hand of destiny. Both games start you with a handful of minions and little in the way of starting resources and infrastructure. Over time, you build systems to produce and harvest resources, improve your minions, and develop defenses against various challenges. Let's start by comparing how the two games handle minions, and then we'll have a look at the environment, the world setting, the interactions and challenges the game provides, and wrap up with a distinct difference between these two great titles. Your people in Oxygen Not Included are called duplicants, short version dupes. They are generated and spewed out by a machine, which marks your spawning point on the map. Dupes have about a dozen different attributes which determine their speed and effectiveness in various jobs. Stuff like digging, ranching, athletics, which is movement speed, or machine use with the tinkering skill. They improve their skills by engaging in activities which use them. Technically, you can specialize your duplicants and tell them only to do certain jobs. In a few cases that definitely makes sense, but for the most part, it's better to rely on your entire herd of duplicants. The result is that as you play a colony, most dupes will gain levels in most skills, which is grand for your colony's effectiveness, but somewhat diminishes their individuality. Additionally, dupes can have some minor traits, being unable to do a specific job, requiring less or more oxygen or food, and what have you. Especially noteworthy is the flatulence trait. Dupes enjoying this one are blessed with kindly intestines, and will periodically discharge small amounts of natural gas. If you want, you can even collect this gas and burn it up to create energy. So generous is the world of Oxygen Not Included. In Rimworld, colonists, which are also called pawns by many players, have a similar initial setup. A dozen base attributes and the different job types, and they gain experience by doing these jobs. Unlike Oxygen Not Included, Rimworld colonists benefit from specialization, and colonists in Rimworld have much stronger preferences, different learning speeds for different attributes, and some attributes are going to be much harder to raise than others due to opportunities for your people to test their abilities that may be lacking. Unlike Oxygen Not Included, combat skills are important in Rimworld and among the slowest to grow, so the starting attributes of each individual will largely determine how good they are with ranged and melee weapons for the rest of the game. This makes carefully selecting your starting pawns vital to getting off to a good start in Rimworld, but it's much less important in Oxygen Not Included. That doesn't mean that people don't spend ages clicking on the Shuffle Duplicants button in the starting selection screen. Traits are also slightly more impactful in Rimworld. Besides the usual refusal to do different jobs, those lazy people refusing to build and haul are a tough sell to add to your colony. There are a good number of other traits that affect interactions with other people and the environment. Cannibals or pyromaniacs, psychopaths or transhumanists are but a few examples. Colonists also have a detailed body plan and health system. Injuries can become permanent, prosthetics of various technological levels are an important part of the game as well. Compare this to your duplicants in Oxygen Not Included, which can get injured or infected with disease, but carry no other wear and tear, except for death, which is permanent. Both games feature a priority system for managing tasks, however Rimworld allows you much more direct control if you want it. If you want that specific person to do that specific job, you can order them to do it with 2 clicks. Oxygen Not Included is much less direct. You only give a general job order and your duplicants will get to it in their own time based on the priorities you have set. There's no way for direct specific orders except by maximizing a task's individual priority. This can lead to some frustration among newer players who have a tendency to load their duplicants up with lots of jobs and then get annoyed when they don't seem to complete them in a timely fashion. With their extensive stats and backstories, pawns in Rimworld already start more diverse than Oxygen Not Included's dupes, and as you play your colony, most of them will successfully develop even more memorable aspects. While duplicants in Oxygen Not Included may lack in statistic and story flavour, they absolutely make up for it with their animations and sound effects. In Rimworld, your characters all share the same few bitmaps of character art, and there's barely any animation at all. Although this is by no means a bad thing, you can't, however, but admire Oxygen Not Included's detailed art and animation, especially for your duplicants, which are full of vibrant character. The environment you play in is a big difference between the two games. Both games are 2D, with Rimworld a top-down view and Oxygen a side view. Rimworld has a space cowboy setting. You're starting with basic tools and technology to work stone and wood, and you quickly research mechanical additions, workbenches, and specific objects like automated turrets. In the end, you go for technology surpassing real-world achievements with advanced nanotech, bionics, and other sci-fi stuff. In Rimworld, the environment's main purpose is to provide a backdrop for the actual game, which involves interactions, hostile and friendly, between simulated people, yours and those controlled by the game. In Oxygen Not Included, the environment you live in is probably the most important part of the game. You start within an asteroid-sized mass in a sci-fi setting, and have to survive in its distinct and unconventional ecosystem. The whole world of Oxygen Not Included is based on an impressive environmental physics system. For example, oxygen, which is required for your jeeps to breathe, is lighter than carbon dioxide but heavier than hydrogen. Over time, because CO2 is heavy, it will accumulate at the bottom of your base. Hydrogen will move to the highest points it can reach, and all of the gases need to be managed if you don't want your duplicants suffocating to death. The same applies to other elements in the game. Different pressures, temperatures, and phases mean different properties and uses for everything in the game's environment. A lot of the game's mechanics and constructions are based on managing these properties and stringing them together into a productive system that doesn't have any runaway problems you can't manage. Running large coal or oil burning generator systems will generate lots of CO2. You can use a carbon skimmer to deal with it, but that in turn will use up water and electricity. You could pump the CO2 into space, which is a permanent solution, but also requires power and a decent pipe network. You could feed it to a specific family of critters that exist in Oxygen Not Included, which thrive on carbon dioxide and poop out oil in return. But these critters then need to be cared for, which takes up duplicant time. There are always hard decisions to be made in Oxygen Not Included, driven by your interaction and your duplicant's interaction with the surrounding environment. The interaction of all these systems leads to a wonderfully complex game, with a really interesting and diverse set of tools to interact with as the player. It's fair to say that the environment in Rimworld is more of a background for colonist interactions, whereas the environment in Oxygen Not Included is probably the central part of the game. And this difference in how you feel about it are going to be big factors in deciding which game is for you. We'll talk about how you can figure that out soon. Looking at world setting, the games go in two very different paths here. Oxygen Not Included is very much focused on the asteroid you spawn in. Everything you do and build will affect aspects of it. Mass, temperature, and resource distribution can and will be managed by you. The later stages of Oxygen's tech tree allow you to build rockets and visit other celestial bodies for research, and to gather a variety of special resources. Some of these resources can only be gained from space and unlock higher tech materials and build options. On the whole, everything is intended to be used in your home area though. Everything is directed inwards towards your asteroid's biosphere. Rimworld has implemented a much larger playable area. Instead of the terrarium of Oxygen Not Included, you're set free on an entire planet in Rimworld. Settlements and tribes not only have a basic diplomatic relationship with you, they also have a place in the world and relationships with each other. A faraway settlement will require longer travel times for you to visit, or for them to visit you. This can be good and bad. Weather and terrain are important for travel and survival. Polar regions will quickly kill you if you go there in bikinis, and there are roads and caves and other wonderfully hidden surprises. And most importantly, you can interact with all of it. Stuff outside your colony is not abstracted. Those raiders pestering you, they have an actual base. You can send some of your armed people there to wreck it. In fact, your base is a very fluid term. You can just about give up on it and settle elsewhere if you wish. If that raider camp you just cleared is a great place to live, why not just clean it up, remove the blood and guts, and move right on in? The Rimworld world allows you to mount exploration, combat, and trading expeditions. It provides mobility to your group of colonists and distinct character to regions. Roads mean easier travel, lots of raider camps mean more action. The extended and directly interactable world adds a whole new level to your colony building. Gameplay wise, Rimworld and Oxygen Not Included are more different than it might appear at first glance. As mentioned earlier, Rimworld focuses on colonist interactions. Basic survival is relatively easy. You could just plant a few potatoes somewhere, put up some wooden walls, put on a roof, and live there forevermore in peace. If it weren't for those other annoying settlers and raiders and savage wildlings, of course. The constant pressure from those other simulated people pushes you forward and onward. Better tools, better materials, better weapons to improve your community and deal with outsiders. Dealers in trade or dealers in trading shots? In Rimworld, you have pretty detailed control over combat, and that combat will leave its marks on you. All of the environment and world stuff in the game is used to help create backstories and develop the interactions between your colony and others. Individually, most of the systems are relatively simple, and it's really those emergent interactions that provide the stories that make Rimworld fun and each game memorable. Oxygen Not Included has fewer systems, but they are based on much deeper simulations, and their interactions are much more complex. Like Rimworld, Oxygen Not Included thrives on emergent interaction, but is less focused on your duplicants. Those are just the canaries in your huge, elaborate underground Rube Goldberg mine. Except for slaughtering animals for meat, there is no combat in Oxygen Not Included at all, and the challenges stem more from the player's management or mismanagement and interaction with the physics in the world. That doesn't make it easy. Poisoning and diseases are a constant threat. Too much heat might blight your farms, running out of water or oxygen, or even simple dirt will be significant challenges that could end your game. Unlike in Rimworld, where you can just pick up and move somewhere else, in Oxygen Not Included you'll have to get clever to survive. You will have to complete inspired constructions to manage your resources, piping them around the base to where they're needed, even deploying logic and automation systems to maintain balance and efficiency. You'll need to learn to use and exploit the many interactions of your world. To learn how to do all that and more, you'll have to experiment, and just like Rimworld, you'll probably fail a lot as you learn. Let's have a quick detour into mods. Oxygen Not Included has a very sparse mod selection so far. It hasn't been out as long as Rimworld, that is definitely a big factor as to why that's the case. However, in the long run, Oxygen may well accumulate as many decent mods as Don't Starve, another Clay game which has a very healthy mod community. Right now Oxygen isn't there yet though, and can basically only be played vanilla. If you're after longevity and variety, then Rimworld is definitely going to be the game for you right at this moment in late 2018. In the mod world, Rimworld definitely has a lead. Unlike Oxygen Not Included, Rimworld features a large selection of very extensive mods, and has done all throughout its development. There is an incredible amount of added content available to enhance, extend, add, and occasionally completely rework aspects of the game. Everything is covered, starting from purely cosmetic options and UI enhancements, to added resource and production chains, to a humongous selection of new weapons, items, characters, and interactions. Vanilla Rimworld is already a very large game, and these available mods extend it several times over. The Rimworld modding community has built on the game's strengths and addressed its weaknesses in a way very few other games have experienced. On the whole, Rimworld is also a lot easier to mod. Mods might need some bitmaps for the things they introduce, but don't require any animation work. This doesn't mean that they're necessarily simple though, quite the contrary. It means they're limited just by the capabilities of the engine and what the mod creator wants. The result of which is the very impressive library you have available to install right now. Just to pick one of my personal favourite mods, Cybernetic Storm. It contains an extended organ and limb system. Fun things like organ harvesting and sale, bionic enhancements and nanotech organs, advanced weapons, exoskeletons, all are available to the discerning gamer. Who doesn't want a cyborg army of organ farmers? We've gone over a lot of details, but let's step back and address the big picture. At their core, the games represent two different approaches to base building, and which you prefer is going to determine which game you should get first. Of course, you may already own both of them. Perhaps it'll just determine which one you open next. Rimworld, in many ways, closely adheres to the approach to indirect base building made famous by Dwarf Fortress, that of developing a deep simulation of your minions that leads to compelling stories of individual triumph and disaster. You'll definitely have heard one of these if you know a Rimworld player. Oxygen Not Included, on the other hand, takes a different approach, throwing personal drama as a challenge out of the window and introducing complex environmental factors which must be managed. The stories that Oxygen Not Included players tend to tell are seldom about the duplicants, which have less personality than a hamster, to be honest. And this is where we get to the core difference between the two games. The stories that players tell their mates the next morning after playing way too long into the night. And what type of stories you prefer to tell are going to perhaps tell you which game you're going to want to open up first. You want stories of people, of heroic colonists battling the odds, being cybernetically enhanced and taking out an army of mutants? Or do you love to tell stories about how you managed a complex resource balancing problem? There's no right or wrong answer here, but gamers who fancy themselves engineers will perhaps find much to love in Oxygen Not Included, and your budding psychologists and generals or psychopaths will probably find Rimworld tickles their fancy best. Where do you fall? Are you a fan of cybernetic cannibal psychopaths, or do you enjoy feeling incredibly clever when a series of logic gates automates all of your water management? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm sure your friends are all sick of hearing about either scenario. I've been TinyPirate. This has been a TinyPirate vs. the World episode. Subscribe for more content like this and drop me your thoughts below. And which game do you prefer? Which will you be playing next? Until next time, good night.